You know, it doesn't matter how powerful, badass, or cool certain characters in anime are, they'll always need help at some point. From friends, sidekicks, anybody. And there really are no perfect sidekicks in anime.
He's looking right at us while we talk about him.
Well, you know, except Don Patch and Jelly Jiggler. But ultimately, these characters know that even though they're not the strongest or the smartest or anything among those lines, that they'll always do what's best. And Persona kind of has a habit of having a lot of characters fall into that category. A loyal best friend who really doesn't know when to shut their mouth, but in the end will always do what's right. And that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Ryuji Sakamoto.
What?
Yeah, I know it's pronounced Sakamoto, but I'm so used to the dub and, well, I'm just stuck with it at this point.
Oh, Sakamoto-kun's very identity is being questioned.
You're dead! Make way for the fist of the Phantom!
Get serious.
Chinese here! Get wrecked!
Ryuji meets Ren right outside of Shujin Academy, the first day Ren transfers in. They start off on not exactly the best of terms, because Ryuji thinks Ren's gonna out him to Kamoshida, but they immediately become friends afterwards because Ren is completely confused by Ryuji, and honestly, can you blame him? The two end up saying some of Kamoshida's keywords and end up getting trapped in his palace, a giant castle. A lot of you kind of know the story from there. Ren gets his powers.
Run.
They rescue Morgana. Basic stuff. When they eventually return to the palace for the second time, Ryuji decides to take pictures of all the students suffering in Kamoshida's cognition. Granted, their cognitions and taking pictures of them wouldn't exactly help anything, not to mention how would you explain a giant castle, but hey, his heart's in the right place. They end up getting cornered by Kamoshida and his goons, and ultimately he finally admits at some point that Kamoshida has been a thorn in his side for the longest time. Kamoshida was pushing the track team way too hard, and when Ryuji tried standing up to him as a member of the track team, Kamoshida broke his leg. Which is why he struggles so much at just simply walking. Pretty much everybody blames Ryuji for the track program getting shut down, which is why he became such an outcast, and ultimately, there's a little bit of self-loathing with him. But thanks to Morgana and Ren, Ryuji realizes he can still stand and fight, and he awakens to his persona.
You seek power, correct? Then let us form a pact. Since your name has been disgraced already, why not hoist the flag and wreak havoc? The other you who exists within desires it thus. I am thou, thou art I. There is no turning back. The skull of rebellion is your flag henceforth!
Captain Kidd, and honestly a pretty badass looking transformation. I actually really like his attire and everything. Of course, they beat the shadows and escape again, and Ren even opens up to why he's in this mess, why he's at Shujin in the first place. And unlike the rest of the students, Ryuji immediately takes Ren's side. Heck, in the anime we even see him crying over it. I really like this side of Ryuji. It shows that he's a little bit of a punk, but at the same time, he's still loyal to the people who are good to him. And ultimately, that's what causes he and Ren to actually become friends. In the Japanese version of the anime, he even says he could call Ren Ren.
Ding ding.
I've only had Arlo for a day and a half. But if anything happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself.
Based on Ren's reaction, he does not approve. They decide to work alongside Morgana and take down Kamoshida. But when Ryuji learns that there's a chance that their actions could end up killing Kamoshida, he has second thoughts. Sure, he hates Kamoshida for everything he's done, but at the same time, if they do end up killing him, they're no better than he is. Granted, for everything Kamoshida's done, I don't exactly blame them, but everybody hates this guy, so I'm not gonna rehash them any more than I already have to. We also learned that Ryuji was very close with An at some point. An being the girl who probably is suffering the most thanks to Kamoshida with everything she's going through. We learned that they used to be friends in middle school, but they ended up drifting apart. Ultimately, I really like the dynamic between Ryuji and An. After she joins their group, we learned that they bicker quite a bit, but just enough to the point where it's funny and not to the point where it's overbearing. With relationships like this, you really have to be careful about stuff like that. At its best, you have Sol and Maka, or Joey and Mai from Yu-Gi-Oh! It really works in situations like that. At its worst, you get stuff like, well, you know, typical bland male protagonist in Tsundere. Yippee. Ultimately, they defeat Kamoshida and become the Phantom Thieves, and all basically become friends, teammates, compadres, that sort of thing. Throughout Ryuji's confidant story, you can tell he has a lot of pent-up guilt about what happened with the track team. He feels bad for everything that's going on, but at the same time, you can tell that the rest of the track team and the rest of the school really do not want to let him off the hook. Shujin Academy, the worst high school ever. We also learn more about Ryuji's backstory. During his childhood, his father was a drunk who beat him and his mom and ultimately ended up walking out on them. So it's just him and his mom. You end up feeling really bad for him considering that with everything he's gone through, his mom's shown up at the school and ultimately she's apologized for not being a better mother to him. It's really heartbreaking to see that Ryuji's not completely oblivious to this and just how bad he feels about it. In the games, he even opens up to Ren and say the most free he feels is when he's with Ren. You know, I love stuff like this. I love when two guys in anime could just be open about their friendship with each other and just how much it affects them. It's really nice to see how you can tell that these two really are best friends out of everybody and just how much they care about each other. For the most part. I'll never forgive the whole, oh well, let's just leave Ryuji behind with these two guys who he's clearly not comfortable with. That joke definitely ages well. Yeah, I guess now's as good a time as any to bring it up, but these guys are awful to Ryuji. Like, seriously. They blame him for a lot of the stuff that goes wrong. They call him out for some of the comments he says. And ultimately, not a lot of people apologize to how they treat him. And you guys might be thinking, oh, well, you're talking about the other students, right? And the teachers and everything? Well, yeah, I am. But also, I'm kind of talking about the Phantom Thieves, too. Most notably, Morgana. Oh boy, let's get this part of the video out of the way. So to start, when they first met, Morgana basically thought Ryuji was an idiot. He basically thought Ryuji was just a big giant ape who didn't know left from right. Ryuji responds by insulting Morgana back, and in some cases even calling him useless, which really comes into play when Futaba starts taking over, and this basically ends up hurting Morgana's feelings throughout the game and the anime. And ultimately, it seems like nobody really likes this plotline. Whether you're on Team Morgana or Team Ryuji, everybody kind of feels upset about this. On the one hand, in some cases you could argue that Ryuji should have noticed that Morgana was upset, and that sometimes calling him useless was not exactly good for his self-esteem. On the other hand, you could argue Morgana started this whole thing. Ryuji doesn't really pick on any other member of the Phantom Thieves like he does Morgana, and most of the time, it's self-defense, it's a coping mechanism, so you can't exactly get on him for hurting Morgana's feelings when Morgana rarely, if ever, says anything nice to Ryuji. Yeah, we'll talk more about why this doesn't really work for me later. But by the end of Ryuji's story, the track team is pretty much back together thanks to some help from Ren, and things start to work out for them. Ultimately, it's really cool to see how Ren will do just about anything to help Ryuji. It's also at this point we learn that Ryuji is really close with his mom. Heck, at one point during An's confidant, when Ren and Ryuji are trying to help her out and Ryuji roasts her for her thinking that she's some sexy anime character, he ends up leaving because he promised to help his mom out with some stuff. Heck, An actually mentions that she's kind of jealous with how close Ryuji is with his mom. It's a really cute thing to see. But hey, this is an analysis, and as many nice things I've said about Ryuji, I also have to list some flaws. His grades and logic are downright abysmal at times.
You don't gotta throw the truth right in my face like that.
He's not exactly the most sensitive person to talk to, and he keeps screaming that you guys are the Phantom Thieves. Like, a lot. Oh, Ryuji, please stop doing that. Not only that, but he's also a huge pervert. especially when it comes to An. It gets kind of messed up in a sense when you see everything An's gone through, but you also realize in a sense that he would do anything to protect her. Heck, when they go to the beach in the game, she kind of teases him about being a pervert, and she ends up leaning on him for, I'm gonna be honest, a lot longer than I was expecting. And now, I've stalled long enough. Let's talk about Morgana's departure. Yeah, to be frank, this is probably the weakest part of the game in general. And even Royal really didn't help it all that much. Since Futaba showed up and she's basically the new navigator, Morgana ends up feeling useless throughout his story, and Ryuji's comments, like I've said before, really don't help with that. Ultimately, when the gang can't decide to take down the obviously bad Haru's dad, Morgana ends up storming off, thanks to having a fight with Ryuji. The anime kind of makes this worse, because Ryuji agrees with Morgana in the sense that they have to go after Haru's dad, and then he still ends up insulting him.
I've got Ryuji on my side. Great.
What does that mean? Suddenly I'm not good enough to help?
You see why Morgana really doesn't come off as a victim here? But ultimately, they all make up thanks to the power of the beauty thief, and Ryuji apologizes to Morgana in the anime. Now, nobody ever says Morgana needs to apologize to Ryuji in the games, in the anime, in someone's fanfiction. I don't know. Like I said, it really just wasn't an arc that anybody seemed happy with. But we do see one moment from Ryuji that I end up really liking. He ends up getting really mad during one of their missions that they're talking about, and ultimately it ends up scaring Haru and Futaba in particular.
Ryuji!
And after that, he ends up calling Ren and saying how he feels bad about how he scared them, and he wants to call them and apologize. I love that. For somebody who doesn't always think about his actions or his words as it's happening, it's really nice to know that Ryuji thinks enough about what he's done after the fact, and that sometimes he can be in the wrong. Heck, let's be honest, he's a hero even in real life. Remember, he ended up saving that masked girl from Ren in the haunted house in the anime. Come on, how come we're not talking about that ship more? When are we gonna start getting our Ryuji x Masked Girl fanfics? Ryuji and Saiten Taisen also provide pretty awesome effects for your party. He's one of the strongest in the group, and ultimately he was never somebody I took out of my party unless I absolutely had to, because he was just that good. He even has a lot of really strong moments during Shido's palace. He ends up with a plan that puts the girls in bikinis, which is not fantastic, but ultimately it gets them the letter that they need, so if it works, I guess. He even ends up getting a boat for them all to escape with, and it's one of the best scenes because everybody's cheering him on as he's running, even with his hurt leg. He ends up saving them all, and then the ship explodes. Oh god, please no. Oh god, please no. He's messing around. Come on, Ryuji, stop messing with us. Please stop messing with us. Please don't do— oh wait, he's right there. No, he's alive and he's good to go. In all honesty, in the game especially, they really milk this scene. Futaba makes it sad, but An makes it flippin' heartbreaking just for how close the two are. And for him to show up and confirm that he's still alive, it's pretty awesome, especially considering all he did to save them, which is exactly why the girls decide to beat him up. Ugh. This is not a scene that's aged well. Even the people who hate Ryuji readily admit that this was unnecessary. They should have showed some form of gratitude, and even in Royal, they still don't fix this. It's why a lot of people kind of grow to dislike the Phantom Thieves in some aspects. Oh well, at least in Royal they mention at some point that they should apologize for it, but I'd rather just the scene change to them all being happy he's alive, even if it does come with a few tears. The day is saved, and in Royal, things get a little more interesting. During a lot of the dreams, Ryuji ends up back on the track team. He's friends with everybody, things are going well, his mom seems happy. Ultimately, he really doesn't notice that he's in a dream world, just like everyone else does. But at the same time, it's awesome because he ends up saving Akechi and Ren at the last minute, right before they're able to take an attack. Besides the scene itself being really cool, it's actually kind of an interesting bit of trivia. According to one of the producers, the design team really wanted Ryuji to stop the attack from Sendrila and look really cool during it. So it's nice to know the design team tried their best to make Ryuji look cool, because that's exactly what they did. He ends up apologizing to Ren for putting him through all this pain alone.
Yeah! I'm getting pumped!
And ultimately, his persona finally evolves into William. And after all of that, the day is finally saved. And Ren decides to spend Valentine's Day with Ryuji, if, you know, he's still single at this point.
Must suck to have no game.
I actually appreciate how in Royal they make it so all of the guys spend time together, just so it doesn't make it seem like if you're alone on Valentine's Day, you're a complete loser. Not to mention Ryuji giving Ren some chocolate, and Ren thinking it's actual Valentine's Day chocolate, and it's a confession. God, Ren, never change. Except the part where you date almost every girl during Valentine's Day. You need to change that. Also, in a pretty interesting twist, he admits that he's gonna be the first person to move on. Ryuji admits that he's actually moving away. He's going to live closer to a rehab facility so he can fix up his leg and go back to running competitively. It's kind of awesome to see that Kamoshida isn't gonna keep him down and that Ryuji's able to go back to doing what he loves. It's a pretty awesome ending for him, and it's especially cool that he's the first person to kind of realize this through his maturity before everybody else dumps on their thing. But hey, their stuff's cool too. And ultimately, that's Ryuji. And people hate this character, and they deserve to hate him because he's kind of annoying at times. No, I'm sorry, I can't do this. A lot of you can kind of tell at this point, and if you follow the channel long enough, you know by this point, but I'm just gonna say it. In terms of Persona 5, Ryuji is my favorite character. Yes, he can be brash. Yes, he can be annoying. Yes, he can be insensitive, but he almost never means it that way. He comes off as the most loyal of all the Phantom Thieves, especially to the player.
You didn't abandon me, so thanks, man.
I can understand that at times he can say something insensitive or wrong, but he almost always tries to make up for it and stand up for what he believes is right. Not to mention his dynamic with An being one of the best things about the game in my opinion. Ultimately down the line, I never really found myself wanting to romance An because, despite my comments earlier, I could kind of see An and Ryuji ending up together in the future, even if they don't exactly know how to go about doing it because, you know, they both share one brain cell. He ends up with some of the better development even outside of his confidant story. He starts off not really caring and ultimately just wants to be a Phantom Thief for attention, but as the series progresses, he actually finds himself wanting to help people from the shadows and really do his best to make other people find reasons of living and being happy. That's a big step up, and not to mention, he still feels like the same character. He doesn't become some super strong, badass, wise character. Even after everything, Ryuji is still Ryuji. And ultimately, a lot of franchises really can't nail that with their characters. Not to mention, he also sticks up for Sophia in Persona 5 Strikers, and it's, well, let's just say it's definitely worth the wait.
Come on, Skull. Phantom Thieves are usually supposed to be classier than that. But not this time!
Worthless hunk of junk!
Ryuji's never gonna be a rocket scientist. He might not even be a regular scientist. I doubt he even passes science class, but ultimately, his heart is always in the right place. He wears his heart on his sleeve, he cares about his friends, and he's loyal to them until the end. That's why Ryuji's my favorite character from Persona 5. Well, you know, at least until their 38th sequel or something like that, then things might have to change. But what do you guys think about Ryuji? Did I say anything that changed your mind, made you love him more, made you hate him more? Are you still unsure, or did you love him from the start like I did? Be sure to let me know. And just let me know what other Persona 5 characters I can talk about. Preferably characters from 5, or any of the spin-offs of 5. Don't worry, I'll play 3 and 4 soon enough, and hopefully I can talk about them at some point. But just let me know. This is Ryuji saying, let's all get a beef bowl with Ryuji and Yusuke. You know, even including all the violence that comes with it.
I'm not brave, but I kept trying. Not strong enough, but I kept going.